They had to make only three you kept it.
I'm just waiting for him to signal. Good evening once again. I'm Dr. Anjali Tandon, and it is my pleasant duty to welcome you all to today's discussion on IICID's India Industrial Development Report 24-25. As you know, our chair for today's discussion is Dr. V.K. Saraswat. I request Dr. Saraswat to please come on the table. I invite Professor Nagesh Kumar to join on the table, please. We have three eminent panelists for today's program. Mr. Ajay Shankar, sir, please request you to come on the table. Ambassador Dammu Ravi and Professor Singh, please join us on the table. Without taking more of your time, I would like to hand over the proceedings to the chairperson. However, before that, I have few words of introduction for our today's chair. Dr. Vijay Kumar Saraswat is a member of Niti Aayog, Government of India. Dr. Saraswat has an illustrious career and has played a pivotal role in different capacities over decades of government service. He retired as the Secretary of Defense Research and Development Organization, DRDO, and is also credited with the indigenous development of missiles such as Prithvi, Dhanush, Prahar, Agni 5, just to name a few. His contributions include evolving a roadmap for the development of alternative energy systems, such as clean coal technologies, high-efficiency concentrated solar power systems, and bioenergy and hydrogen-based economy. He has also initiated a program for the development of silicon photonics technology. As a member of the Niti Aayog, Dr. Saraswat initiated the Methanol Economy Program for transportation, energy generation, and production of chemicals and fertilizers. He's also chaired a committee on technical textiles and prepared a roadmap for the futuristic growth of this sector in India. Dr. Saraswat is the recipient of many awards, including Padma Shri in 1998, Padma Bhushan in 2013. He's been conferred an honorary doctorate by more than 25 universities, and most recently in 2018 by the Jamia Hamdard. With that, I welcome you, sir, once again and request you to take over the proceedings for the day.
Very good evening. Namaskar to all. It's indeed a pleasure to chair this important session on a very interesting book which has been written, which is Harnessing India's Manufacturing Potential, India Industrial Development Report. And Nagesh Kumarji has been in touch with me on this particular subject. We have had some discussions also, and I think some of the thoughts which occurred during those discussions have been captured. And I personally believe that it's a great work which has been done. But before we finally conclude on that, I think we will just set out what should be the configuration of our today's discourse and discussion. I think we can have presentation from Dr. Nagesh Kumar, and then probably we can have some thoughts from other panelists. Then probably I can conclude with my talk. I think this would be fine. Is it okay? we'll work on that. So, Dr. Nagesh Kumar, you can start with your presentation or whatever way you would like to tell us how the report has evolved and what is the content of it and what do you want to convey. Over to you, sir.
The esteemed chair, Dr. Saraswat, very eminent panelists, Mr. Ajay Shankar, Ambassador Dammu Ravi Sahab, and my friend Professor Ram Singh, and all the very distinguished friends in this room. I'm very delighted that we are here this evening discussing the manufacturing potential of the country and how we can go about it. So what I'm going to do in just 15-20 minutes of this presentation is a summary of a very extensive and detailed report, and some of you have had a chance to glance through or the other. And so what I'm going to give you is a very sort of cryptic summary or bulleted kind of summary of what has been attempted and some messages that in the country. And there are some very learned people who think India should not bother about manufacturing sector and just focus on services. And very learned, very well known. I'm sure everyone is aware. Sorry, I don't know. Oh. I think, yeah, something. This. Oh, this is, what is this coming? Oh, okay. Yeah. So, so some unnecessary debate is there. Throwing cold water on India's efforts to build manufacturing sector, but we all those who have studied economic development know that demand for services sector is a derived demand. It cannot grow in vacuum. So you need a manufacturing sector to sustain even the growth of services sector. And we need both services and manufacturing growing very rapidly. And so there is nothing wrong in harnessing the potential of services sector. But please, yeah, there are seats here. So, so we, in this first slide, we're talking about the key trends in India's economic development story in the past 75 years. We have just completed 75 years of our republic this year. And so it's a good opportune moment to take a stock of what has been achieved. And so when you begin to list all the things that India has achieved in 75 years, there are quite an impressive agenda that you come across, that we have had sustained a trajectory of rising growth, and we have built the fifth largest economy, which is fastest growing among the large economies, and then we have lifted 500 million people out of extreme poverty in 75 years, impressive growth in all socio-economic development indicators, and we have emerged as a leading player in many sectors. So, but the remaining challenges which we need to bother about, worry about, in the context of the aspiration for a developed country by 2047. And when you begin to think about what needs to be done or what more needs to be done, you find that we have had a growth which has been increasingly jobless, and so because there are no decent jobs, enough decent jobs being created, so more people turn to the informal sector. And so that is also the reason for persisting poverty, and so there are some 200 million people living in poverty, which is a very big challenge. And when you look into the question why there is not enough job creation, then obviously economists go to the idea of structural transformation. What kind of structural transformation we have had in the country? And so then you realize that we have transformed an agriculture-dominated economy into a services-dominated economy, but neglecting that process the manufacturing sector, which means that the kind of jobs that for unskilled and skilled workers that manufacturing could have created could not be created. So we missed that opportunity. And if you look at the cross-country evidence or across the states of India, as there are these figures on the screen, you find that manufacturing-led transformation, is linked with or related with higher per capita incomes and lower incidence of poverty. So I think the one message which is coming out is loud and clear that for our developed country aspiration to be realized, manufacturing cannot be overlooked. So, I think it's stuck, so for some reason. Yeah, okay. So the other thing, when you think about building manufacturing capacity in the country, you also realize that the external environment in which you build the manufacturing sector had changed dramatically. So compared to the 1990s and early part of this century, when China was building manufacturing sector, the world trade and investment were growing at the annual average rates of around 20%. Now, 3.5% is considered to be a very good growth. So the world had changed, and there is a rise of protectionism, trade wars, stalled multilateral negotiations, and slow growth of world trade and investments, which now termed as globalization, has been turned into slowbalization. The other thing is the rise of industrial policy worldwide, and some of the biggest champions of free markets, including the United States, are pursuing industrial policy in a very aggressive manner. And so some of the recent industrial policy initiatives in the United States, I'm sure everyone is familiar about these 3 acts passed by the Biden government in 2022, which have put on the table some more than $1 trillion to be given to industry in the form of tax breaks and investment incentives. And then they are following it up by all kinds of strategic interventions like domestic content requirements. And there are additional complications for building manufacturing like net zero commitments on the horizon, the ongoing or emerging or incipient AI revolution, which affects our job creation. But then there are also some strengths or advantages that India can leverage for building our manufacturing sector, including our large and fast-growing domestic market, which provides opportunities for building world-scale plants to tap scale economies, supply chain restructuring, which is ongoing, and initially it focused on more of Vietnam or Mexico, but now because they have saturated Vietnam already, it should look at India, and especially the region of fact that this restructuring of global companies goes or finds friends. So friendshoring, as it is called, we should have an advantage because we have good relations with investing countries on the east of India and in the west. So, and demographic sweet spot, the opportunity to leapfrog into a more sustainable industrialization, because much of our capacity is yet to be created, we have the opportunity to build it in a more sustainable manner. And then ICT capability that we have could give us an advantage in the digital revolution. So what are these opportunities available to India for manufacturing? First is, of course, the making for India. And we have over time seen lot of retrogression or deindustrialization or a hollowing out of Indian economy. In the sense, number of things we were producing way back in 1960s, 70s and 80s, we do not produce them anymore. We import them and branding is done here and sold. So some simple appliances, electrical household goods are imported from China and branded with Bajaj or whatever label they are. And so the import dependence has grown up, and we estimated that manufactured imports, India is importing every year some $350 billion of manufactured imports, and part of them include the items that we were making, and including APIs. Incidentally, Indian drug industry was not built on imported APIs. It was built on India's own drug and API system. We had HAL and IDPL manufacturing them way back 40 years ago. So begin to systematically retrieve that space that we have lost, and even targeting 50% of these $350 billion of manufactured imports that we make annually, it would be very interesting and good for the Indian economy and job creation. Defense industrialization, we have become now conscious of the potential of this, and offset programs are really a very important tool. But also getting into shipbuilding and commercial aircraft assembly. Just to give you an example, Indian airliners have ordered 1,200 jet planes. And this is like combined production of 1 year of Boeing plus Airbus together. So we have that kind of demand, and so one assembly plant certainly can be sustained by demand by India and other neighboring countries. So PLI scheme is one initiative taken by government to reverse this trend of hollowing out and localize the manufacturing within the country, and some early results are there to be seen. For instance, in toys, a labor-intensive industry, we have turned from being a net importer to net exporter in just a couple of years. But we need to guard against the threat of dumping from across the borders. It's a very serious matter, and I have lived for many years in Bangkok while working for UN SCAP, and I know that Southeast Asian countries are closest you can get to China. Yet they are now afraid and are hit. 2,500 factories have closed down in Thailand itself in last 1 year, and now they are beginning to take action. So to contain the damage. So this is something, when we try to build our own manufacturing, we need to be aware of the threat of dumping, because the neighboring country is sitting on a huge underutilized capacity which was created to export to the Western markets. Now Western markets do not want to import from China, so where do you export this, this capacity? And next door, India, expanding, growing market is one. So second, opportunity for India is making for the world, or export-oriented industrialization. Obviously, in this changed external context, to think of a whole hog export-oriented manufacturing sector would be very challenging. But there is an opportunity given to us by the restructuring of supply chains of global corporations on China plus one basis, consolidation of our competitiveness in the existing areas of India's strength, including labor-intensive sectors like textiles and clothing, leather goods, gems, jewelry, food processing, etc. Skill-intensive industries like generic pharma and vaccines, auto components, and a few others where we have made a mark, and resource-based industries where natural resource advantage provides us some, advantage or competitive strength. So targeting just 0.5% increase in our share in global trade over the next 4-5 years could add to our MVA by $150 billion. Then the sunrise sectors, electronics and semiconductors, you know about how the handphone or mobile phone assembly has become a very big business in the last few years. And so every month we are exporting $2 billion worth of phones. Now, last month, I think it closed $3 billion worth of phones. Although this is just still an assembly operation, but this is how electronics grows everywhere. I mean, you begin with assembling and then deepen the value chain. And so hopefully in next few years, we will see some improvement in our value addition. And then the semiconductor mission of the government has attracted number of investments, and so some 10 plants are in different phases of implementation. And finally, new green industries. The green industries, you have a lot of examples and lot of potential. But the point I'm trying to make is that we have set before ourselves a very ambitious target for a clean energy transition. 500 gigawatts of power to be generated by renewable sources by 2030. And that cannot happen without local industry, local manufacturing supporting it. Right? Because the world, the capacity to produce equipment is all dominated by China to the extent of 80 to 85%. In whether you talk of solar PV or EVs or the batteries, any one of the renewable energy industries. So we have an opportunity to build these industries, and that helps us to deliver the ambitious clean energy transition that we have in mind. And fortunately, some of the government initiatives like PLI, FAME, and all others, and then purchase power agreements have delivered something, and we are hoping to become self-sufficient in solar PV manufacturing, cell manufacturing by next year. So similarly, in green hydrogen mission, the electrolyzers are being, some companies are coming forward to make them. But these are all emerging technologies, not mature technologies. So we need to pump in a lot of resources in R&D, which can help India to take leadership positions in these sectors. So the point, this is a back of the envelope kind of calculation, that if we were to target or capture all of these opportunities, there is a possibility that by 2030 we can double the value of manufacturing value added by 2030, which will become a very big source of generating direct and indirect jobs. Now, few other, analytical issues that came out of this report. One is that when we looked at the industrial structure of the country, and so we find that over time we have managed to build a very large and diversified manufacturing base, which is 5th largest in the world. Like our share in GDP, global GDP, we also have a 5th biggest manufacturing sector, but a very small share compared to the China and United States. But and the diversification has also happened in the direction of more technology intensive sectors, although labor intensive sectors are still sustaining 42% of organized sector jobs. Similarly, in trade, our export structure has become more diversified, more complex, like our industrial structure, and share of India in global exports and GDP participation has grown up, but not as impressively as it has in the other countries, some of the peer countries like next door neighbor. So, but as imports have grown faster than exports, trade deficit has tended to widen, but surplus in services is helping us to manage that, manage the current account deficit in check. And then there is a very interesting divergence in our trade structure, in the geography of our trade, that there are East Asian countries. We have seen them become much more important sources of our imports, and there are Western countries. We have seen them grow into importance as the destinations of our exports. But interestingly, the FTA structure or FTA strategy of India, we have a comprehensive economic partnership or FTA with practically every East Asian country, including Japan, Korea, ASEAN, and Australia. China also gets some preferences under Asia Pacific Trade Agreement, which was an initiative of UN ESCAP. But the major destination countries, including UK, EU, and US, we have no trade agreement as of now. The negotiations have been languishing for many years. Now there is a revival of negotiations with UK and hopefully EU, and US-India summit recently. Prime Minister Modi was there in this month itself. They agreed for launching negotiations for a bilateral trade agreement. The other thing I think we need to exploit and harness the synergy coordination between India's growing portfolio of economic assistance, and Secretary ER is here, and the LCs, etc., for export promotion. I'm sure it is happening, but more, that is. And the other thing we notice is that Indian rupee has been appreciating in real terms over time, which is hurting the competitiveness of local manufacturing and exports, and this is something we need to worry about. Now, FDI. Again, economic reforms, growing domestic market, and other advantages have raised the profile of India among the hosts of FDI, and various indicators and all that are there, which is also very impressive to find that multinational companies, subsidiaries, Indian subsidiaries are doing better than their parents or operations in other countries. So people are talking about importance of the India strategy. Yet, I think we remain an underperformer in terms of attracting the kind of investments that we should be attracting for our scale of the economy. And so proactive FDI targeting is something we need to move on to. Opening up the market and producing nice brochures that we do are not enough. So we need to knock the doors of companies that should be investing. And the other thing is that we were doing some analytical work based on a sample of 11,450 companies, manufacturing companies, and looking at the determinants of export competitiveness, and we find that inward and outward FDI both turn up with a positive significant sign. So they help in the export competitiveness, and the scales of operation. The large size companies can do better, and we need to encourage outward FDI by Indian companies to become enhance or extend their global footprints. But it's very critical to augment industrial R&D activity. This is a full chapter devoted in the report to R&D activity. And everybody has read about how India has scaled the ranks in global innovation rankings from 81 in 2015 to 39th in 2 years ago. There is also growth in patenting activity, and we are hosting now some 1,700 R&D centers and global capability centers of multinational companies. But our R&D to GDP ratio is pathetically low 0.7%, which is an underestimate. So we, did some calculation and found that it should be 1.25%. Even that is very small compared to the global average of more than 2%. And the second problem with this is that large part of it is spent in the public sector organizations, like the ones Dr. Saraswat was heading earlier, not in the industry. The industry should be doing more R&D. And so new initiatives like this Anusandhan National Research Foundation and the 100 lakh crore corpus that government has announced in the last couple of years could be helpful, but we also feel that a second-tier patent system like utility models or they could be helpful, especially for helping the small MSMEs to do more innovation. And India's preparedness for IR 4.0 or AI is better than its level of development compared to the other countries, but we can make our education system fit for the purpose and generate or create more engineers who are trained in AI than the traditional areas of engineering like civil or mechanical, and where maybe demand is going down. Then nurturing MSMEs, MSME, as every one of us recognizes, is a backbone of Indian economy. They sustain a very large proportion of our workforce, but they remain weak players, and they were worst affected out of this liberalization after 1991, because there was an import surge in the consumer goods in industries which are generally made by these MSMEs. So we are proposing that we find that much of these imports coming to India of consumer goods are channeled through organized retail sector, and so we kind of try to impose some kind of performance requirements on these organized sector retailers, that okay, you import things which are hurting our MSMEs, but for every dollar of import you have to export as much or if not more of things produced by MSMEs, and that they get hooked up with GVCs. Then the report has also devoted some space to identify what and where. What do we produce and where? So there is a segregation of priority sectors. So we went industry by industry and found which should be prioritized, and I won't go into the details of that because it would take a long time. And also using the methodology of Harvard Business School, this Industrial Atlas project, the methodology of that, to identify what a state produces or where their strengths are and what it can diversify into. But finally, the way forward. So we feel that the two industrial policy resolutions India has had, one in 1957, one in 1991. 1957 was the Commanding Heights Industrial Policy Resolution. 1991 was about globalization, liberalization, and privatization. Both have become outdated in the current context, and we need a new framework, new context, new policy resolution, which could put together, I mean, it doesn't really matter what you call it, but it should provide some guidance about targets, what we are aiming at, in terms of share of export, share of MVA, global MVA, and all that. And it should have the broad principles such as primacy of localization of jobs and value addition, entrepreneurship, and locally anchored technological capabilities. It should identify the sectors where we have strengths, investment promotion principles, what we will promote, how we will promote, and how we will leverage FDI and MNCs. how to build national champions, including through outward FDI, and further for fostering innovative activity and skill development, fostering green industrialization, supporting Indian manufacturing through market access negotiations on bilateral, regional, and multilateral basis, and the provision of efficient industrial infrastructure, competitive exchange rate. I have not highlighted this enough. I think I said just in one word that in industry to thrive, we need to have a competitive, in real terms, exchange rate, and then financing. You know, the term lending institutions that we have, a trinity of term lending institutions that we started with, IDBIs of the world, have been turned into commercial banks. So now we do not have a single institution catering to the term lending of the industry in a specialized manner and having expertise. So that is one recommendation that we have made. And finally, and most critically, I think high-powered institutional architecture to enable strategic perspective and a coordinated implementation of this industrial strategy or policy, whatever you call it, is most critical, because, you know, industrial policy is a combination of several policies, as we saw, the investment, MSME, textile ministry, electronics industry ministry. So there are, you know, several branches of the government, including the Reserve Bank or other financial institutions. So we need to have a coordinated approach in implementing this policy.
Thank you, Dr. Nagesh. It was a wonderful presentation, an overview of what your report or your book indicates. But I think the basic scenario which probably one has to look at is, if India has to be really going into that 5 trillion or whatever that economy 30 trillion we are talking of, or a developed nation, will it be a manufacturing-led economy, or will it be, again, the point which we started right in the beginning, can we continue with the assumption that service sector alone is good enough? So that's a major point which still needs to be debated, but I think otherwise your presentation has really covered most of it. Now I think I would request my esteemed panelists that we can start with some of your comments. We can start with Mr. Ajay Shankar, A for alphabet-wise. You can sit and talk if you want.
Expressing my admiration and appreciation for what Nagesh Kumarji has done. This is an outstanding report, and I'd recommend all of you to get a copy and read it. It's the first of its kind, and is as good as the best in the world. The other, I think, important point I'd like to make is that this report has come at a very timely moment. And I'm an optimist. I believe that India is at an inflection point where it can genuinely take off and become a developed economy. But we are not yet there. And I think the big challenge for all of us, and those of us who engage with the rest of our elite and government and the political class, is to get people to think about the right things and about the possibilities and then the difficult decisions that need to be taken. But personally, I'm very optimistic about it. And first, let me say why I'm optimistic. I had not expected 10 years back that we would have the startup culture of the kind we have today. It has surprised everybody. I mean, I have had something to do with this whole initiative, and we were, thinking it's worth doing, but nobody had expected it to be so successful. Then we have a competitive cost advantage in terms of human capital at every level of the hierarchy. So whether it's top management, whether it is R&D, whether it's middle management, or at the bottom of the pyramid. And this competitive advantage I discovered when Volkswagen had set up their first plant in India, And the gentleman who did it was a German, and he came to India for the first time in his life. So when the plant was ready, I asked him, "What's your experience?" He said, "We have and this is, I'm talking of 2008-9, that we were able to complete the plant ahead of schedule, and every level of his Indian employees was superior or as good as he could have wanted. His entire problem was outside his factory gates, which was below expectation. Now that was India 15 years back, so today we are far better. So the talent and the potential to take off is there. Now, where lies the problem? And here I'm going to make my point a little more starkly. So, we take ideology as dharma, as mantra. So, planned economy till 91, we did an excessive job of micromanagement, thinking civil servants could run the economy and direct every micro enterprise, big enterprise, and we underperformed. Come 91, we embraced the Washington consensus. Free markets, they will deliver everything. And we have again underperformed. And the way to look at our underperformance is that 91, we were at par with China in technology, par at per capita income. And this is the messy, government that we had before, socialistic, not market friendly, etc., etc. Now, post 91 till now, we still have to take off in terms of both growth and manufacturing. So clearly, my submission is that the complete withdrawal of the state has been a liability. Now, what is the right role of the state to adopt, what policies to adopt is an issue which needs to be debated, because we can't go back to micromanagement of the kind we had before 91, and clearly this complete free market case affair is not delivering. So the way to think about it is to, look at a ship trying to sail. You take advantage of wind and go in the right direction. So very powerful market forces, how do you steer them? You get higher investment, more jobs, and so on and so forth. Now there I would like to draw your attention to the fact that we have a serious problem in India. Our savings are not large enough, but where do those savings go? They go in a disproportionate measure in areas where we create asset bubbles, asset price bubbles. They do not go to create jobs and productive production. So you suddenly get a spike in share prices when the firms whose shares have gone sky high are not growing anywhere at the rate at which their stock valuation has gone up. Or real estate. Real estate is the softest business to do, but it gets so much investment. And our government policies also support a real estate price bubble. Now, if you have a real estate price bubble which is stable, then by definition you are driving away labor-intensive activity because firms can't afford that expensive land. So we need to rethink in terms of fundamentals. Once we get that right, specific policies will follow far more easily. Nagesh, you mentioned right at the end the real exchange rate issue. Now, we are the only country in the world which does not believe as yet that having a competitive real exchange rate is desirable. Having real exchange rate appreciation is like driving your car with the handbrake on. And that a strong currency, which is artificially strong, is a terrible idea because it prevents you from creating jobs. Now, the only real success after World War II in industrialization have been the East Asian economies. Japan was industrialized before World War II, but if you come to Korea and then China, all of them artificially depreciated their currency and kept it low. So China had reserves of $3-4 billion, Korea had a couple of $1 billion. We are the only one where the RBI intervenes to prevent depreciation, which is inevitable. Now, I am talking a little more about this real exchange rate appreciation issue because there is a consensus across the political elite and the civil society elite that a strong rupee means a strong India. The reverse is true, and I think there's a great job for educating people about this. And the Chinese kept it depreciated to such an extent that they succeeded, and after they succeeded, the Americans knocked them hard, and they behaved a little better. Now, the real exchange rate appreciation is equivalent to moving the import duties. So if there's a 10% real exchange appreciation, you have reduced import duties by 10% across the board, which in some cases in India means negative import duty. Now, underlying this issue is the political economy issue, and that is fortunately or unfortunately not a central issue of discussion. So who gains with the strong real exchange rate? The big corporates who borrow in dollars, the rich who consume overseas or consume luxury imported products, or who educate their children overseas or who take holidays overseas. Who loses? MSMEs, small producer, and so on and so forth. And this fundamental contradiction or dialectic between consumer and producer is very fundamental to our political economy, and now the US is discovering it with a bang. Because for 40 years they felt that consumer was more important, and now the ordinary people of America have voted somebody who really, many of us may have very different views about him, but he's there because the ordinary American has finally felt that as workers we need our government, don't need our government as consumers for getting cheap Chinese products. Now, whatever is the relationship between China and US, ours is a similar relationship. Imports from China have effectively been deindustrializing India. Nagesh mentioned it mildly. I think we should look at it frontally. And unless we say that we will do what it takes to reindustrialize and catch up with China, using whatever legally permissible measures are available, we will not do that. My worry is that as an elite, we have lost confidence. I don't think anybody seriously believes that we can ever catch up with China. Now, we were at par in 91, 34 years, they are 5 times ahead. So our goal should be 47, we'll catch up. Whether we catch up or not is a different matter, but at least we should have that ambition and make the effort. And that's where I would request Saraswati to take the discussion forward, that we must say, maybe not publicly, but privately, we must brainstorm on how to catch up with China. Certainly there is no lack of talent in India, and as I said that we have a real advantage in terms of competitive wages. Now, this takes me, I could go on and on, but I'll try and make a few more major points. One is that, again, the division or the dialectic between the consumer and the producer gets reflected in India, that we have imposed unnecessarily high costs on production. And post-reforms, this is one area which I feel sad we neglected. So what does the PLI do? It recognizes there is a cost disadvantage. And we are giving cash to firms to overcome that cash disadvantage. That's a very circular way of addressing the problem. Why not just lower costs for all firms rather than select a few firms to succeed? Now, this will need hard decisions. The hard decisions are the kind that you bring diesel into GST. It's the core cost of logistics. Hard decision would be not to build any more toll roads. The US debated toll roads for 100 years and kept taking the decision that interstate highways would be toll-free because that makes production cheaper. Look at natural resources. Now we have become prisoners of the doctrine that we will auction scarce resources. Now auctions are a way of putting up prices. And what is naturally available to us, we hike up the price and therefore impose a high cost to every business. So all these major decisions of auctioning coal mines, auctioning mineral resources, not giving iron ore free to producers of steel, they're all decisions which are holding us back. They need to be undone. And we need discussion in that area. So how do you bring costs of business down? Ease of doing business is a minor thing. The real thing is cost of doing business. And once we succeed there, then I think Nagesh mentioned lots of areas where you could have intelligence sector-specific policies. And each one will have to be tailor-made. So I'll give you just one example, textiles. When WTO was signed, there was the conviction that quotas will go and our exports will catch up with those of China. It just hasn't happened. Now, one factor behind it is that we do not permit duty-free imports of synthetic fabric because one domestic producer is very powerful. The net result is we, for 20 years earlier, we were exporting cotton-made garments, we're still doing that. So each sector needs a very hard, deep dive and closed-door discussions to arrive at what would work. Now, electrical appliances were mentioned, or most of the stuff that comes from China. They are made in India, they can be made in India, but they are not being made in India because of cost disadvantage. And now there is a bigger disadvantage, which is scale. Because till you get scale, you are not cost effective, whether in India or in the global market. But here, fortunately, Apple has demolished the myth that we cannot be competitive in manufacturing. In 5-6 years, they have used Indian workers, Indian management, and the exports are shooting up at a rate which I didn't think was possible. So they have demonstrated decisively to the whole world that cost-effective manufacturing on scale is possible in India. So our goal should be 10 more apples in terms of FDI. And my final point, and that's addressed to the chair, that we have to stop lecturing firms, please do R&D. And we have to recognize that they are there for profits. So government must put in money for R&D by the private sector and find some ways of encashing the benefits if they succeed. Now the US has had a great program of DARPA. We till date believe we cannot fund private sector R&D. I think we should fund it generously where we think an individual firm or consortium can succeed, and have an agreement that we succeed in the market, you pay me something like royalty. So I will end here because I've said more than enough, but I'll end with my final point that we need to go back to the drawing board, think afresh, do not rule out any possible policy option, and have only one goal: catch up with China and create enough jobs for our young so that we have political stability. Thank you.
Shankar, it was wonderful coverage of all aspects of what is the state of issues with respect to manufacturing in the country and the economy as a whole. But the most important part is that you have touched on a very important point: how to catch up with China. People don't want to talk about it because all of us know that's a very uphill task, and the gap has widened so much that one sometimes wonders whether one would be able to really make the adequate adjustment in the present economic conditions to reach that level of scale. Okay, I will stop here. Now next, I will request Mr. Dammu Ravi, A for Ajay and D for Dammu. So you will say that next.
Thank you, sir. I'll also go there.
Yeah,
Just to connect with the audience.
Sure, please, yeah.
For this great opportunity to be here today. And I'd like to, at the outset, congratulate all the contributors for this excellent report. And I must say, very timely report of the IIC-ISID. And there is so much one can learn, there's so much one can imbibe for policy correction and course correction ahead. The relevance of it, I don't want to go into it because it has already been touched by both Nagesh and Mr. Ajay Shankar. But I'd like to talk about few assumptions and how these assumptions, the mistaken assumptions in the course post-independence, and what corrections we should take going forward to be able to achieve 5 trillion in the near future GDP, 10 trillion in the foreseeable future, and 30 trillion by the Viksit Bharat 2047. Now, these are lessons, and we should always know that it is not criticizing anyone, but I think it's self-critical, and self-critical analysis is so important for us to improve ourselves. And I'd like to take you to the idea that has come in the study itself by a great economist, Nicholas Kaldor, which he said that no nation in the world has become great or strong economically if it is not a manufacturing nation. I think there's a post-Keynesian theory he's postulating and building on that idea that manufacturing and economic growth are closely interlinked. And it's so important for countries as big as ours with large population to have manufacturing. That comes to Dr. Nagesh's conclusion that relevance of manufacturing for a country, an emerging economy like ours. So the hindsight will give us enough lessons to improve upon. But let's look at again the data which will reveal this. So today the manufacturing to GDP is about 16 to 17%. I'm again taking from this study. But if you look at the East Asian economies, it's 30% to GDP. There's so much to catch up. You cannot catch up just because you wish to do it, but there are some exercises we need to undertake. So if today we are at 6.4, 6.8% of the GDP growth rate, but if you have to achieve a 10 trillion, a 30 trillion GDP, you need to be almost a double-digit growth rate. So how do you achieve it? The mistaken assumption that we always had, and Ms. Dr. Naresh has said, that you miss the industrialization, the industrial revolution, the beginning of the last century, and then we thought that by the end of the last century, with services, you are able to leapfrog. That was an erroneous assumption, in my view, because it caused distortion in the economy. Because services cannot give you value-added job. It can give you value-added jobs, but what we actually need is jobs, semi-skilled and skilled, of manufacturing jobs, to be able to have stability in the economies, to be able to have stability, the socio-economic stability that we need to achieve. Because not having done that, today the informal sector jobs are much more. Migration across states takes place. And imagine the kind of disruption it causes to the society and to the economy. Now, a lot has been talked about the MSME in the study. And what is interesting is, and again the statistics tells us, that 65 million MSMEs in the country today, creating 109 million jobs in the country. 50% of the exports are from the MSME, and about 1/3 of the GDP contribution by the MSME. So it's very clear how important is the stability of the MSME. But let's go beneath that number. Almost 99% of the MSMEs are actually micro units. That's again a big, in my view, an erosion that has happened. Because we have not allowed, the policy has not allowed to graduate the MSME into a higher level. Only in the recent budget, there's been some incentive announced to go up the ladder, but eventually we need to have a stronger MSME moving up the ladder. There's a correction required there. Now, the vulnerability has already been mentioned, the retail sector, the e-commerce sector, how they have been affecting the MSMEs. But let's look at the debate. While I was doing the FTA negotiations, the RCEP, I'll come to a very practical understanding here. When we are negotiating and consulting the industry, the big industry versus the small industry, and what revealed to me, and surprisingly, was the big industry always wanting protection, while the small industry always wanting openness. And I never could realize that this was coming from the small industry. I know that when you open up, the products will come and get dumped, and it can also erode their own position in the manufacturing base. But what we need to distill the number here is, are we able to give a competitively priced components? It's not about finished goods. We need to protect the finished goods. It's no doubt about that. But we need to also see within that, what about the raw materials? What about the components that feed into manufacturing? Are we able to provide them at competitive rates? I think this was being touched by Mr. Ajay Shankar, that the policy intervention would need to look at providing components at a competitive price. Today there is a problem in the way we see it. Even the components are competing in the same space between the big industry and the small industry. And which is why today it's a price issue. You have a tariff, you have an anti-dumping also. So I think we have to go back to the drawing board to see whether the components that we provide to the MSME are globally competitive, or are they more? If they are more, then there is a problem. There is an error. We need to correct that. And it comes to the next point here, is the GVC concept and the tariffs. The mistaken assumption is that you raise high tariffs, automatically manufacturing will happen. That's not true. The manufacturing is a measure of a policy of the country that will incentivize. But there is a correlation between trade and investment. So, no country has again gone up the ladder of economic growth with high tariffs. But then you will say protectionism is important. In today's age of Trump and the tariffs, everybody is talking about MAGA, everybody is making their own country with a significant agenda there. Problem is, how do you calibrate the tariffs? That you are able to make the tariffs at the same time finished goods are protected, but the components and raw materials are able to come with significantly lower tariffs. But we have, from the peak rates of 1991, 350% of tariffs, we are now down. It came down quite significantly for industrial goods at 10%, and agriculture products at 25%, but then gone up again to 15, 17 to 30. So that's an important policy intervention needed. How do you calibrate the tariff that you are able to make your manufacturing competitive? Now let's look at the GVCs itself. The global supply chains will not be effective. And if you want to take advantage of a rising economy, you need to effectively handle or take advantage of the supply chains around you. And that will naturally happen. But if you keep raising the tariffs, then your supply chains are choked. Now, typically, big economies run their own supply chains, like China, Japan, Korea. They run their own supply chains. Most of the vehicles of Toyotas and Hyundai are not coming from Japan or Korea or the Hyundais, but they are being made here. What feeds into them is actually the supply chain of components that makes a finished product in your country. Now, somehow we haven't got that dimension of the manufacturing into our policy, which is why today we still traditionally think that it is good to export everything from out of your country. But that doesn't help, because if you look at the numbers of your exports, it's a very incremental growth. I've been assessing that from 2010 till now, it's a bandwidth of $300 to $400 billion of exports, but imports have been growing. So there's something is not okay there. We need to accelerate. So either your supply chains are choked, or you have not effectively integrated into the global economy. And we'll come to that, how you can actually integrate. Two ways of looking at it. Some sectors we are very competitive: pharmaceuticals, automobiles, leather, textiles. But the way to go about it is to get market access in different geographies of the world. With reciprocal tariffs, it's even more urgent for us to think differently, look at different markets around the world. And we also have to be aggressive and active in the free trade agreements. It's not that you are going to give away everything, but you have to understand what is the core interest of the industry to be able to stitch an FTA that is beneficial to you. And that is precisely the work of the policymakers in consultation with the experts and industry. But then you have to take a broader perspective of how you go about it. Because within the FTA concept of tariffs, you have big industry, you have a small industry, and you have consumers. All of them are equally important. You need to balance these forces that go into your FTA negotiations. Now, we're not talking about zero tariff, and no country will go for a zero tariff. But what is important is predictability on the tariffs. It's even if you have to do a 10% tariff, but that has to be consistent over a period of time. Then only you're able to leverage the supply chains that are around you. And I believe that time has come for India to drive its own supply chains. We haven't been able to understand that this is an important dimension and a strategic importance for a country. Are we able to integrate within South Asia? That's the first thing that we need to do. The second is Africa. Because what Dr. Nagesh Kumar said about China plus one, friendshoring, can only happen to a certain time. Ultimately, it's a competitiveness of your product that will have a lasting presence in the global markets. Let's come to FDI. A lot has been talked about it. We always assumed that if you have a 100% equity policy for various sectors opening up, the FDI will almost automatically will happen. But that's a mistaken assumption here, because FDIs or FDI will happen only if you are able to have a stronger protection measures. If we don't do that, believe the numbers that we see today, about $50 billion, $70 billion FDIs coming, but distilling the number, you will get a more accurate figure. Most FDIs will happen in the brownfield sector, mergers and acquisition, and FIIs. What India needs in the manufacturing sector is a greenfield investments, like the Apple, like you have many MNCs that want to come to India, but in the manufacturing sector. So and that was already announced in the recent budget. For finance minister has said that we need to improve our FDI BIT policy, and that's work in progress. Also like to do a small linkages. Trade investments are interlinked, and these are intimately getting interlinked. And it's very important for us to understand that when countries negotiate with us, they look at your market, and they see that push the investment looking at their trade. We haven't understood that. There's a mistaken assumption that trade will happen by itself. But today, in technology-driven 21st century, with the AIs and the Industrial Revolution 4.0, servicification of manufacturing is a reality. Services are becoming a strong component within the manufacturing. So what you see here today is trade, investment, services, technology, and e-commerce are interlinked concepts. We need to understand at the policy level and within the manufacturing sector. And if we have to be a global player, we have to have a broader understanding of how these forces will actually work. I don't want to take too much time. There's a lot to talk about what's in the study. But one key issue, and I'd like to compliment Nagesh for bringing this out, you need at the policy level a overarching body that's able to take these recommendations and actually implement them. Today, many of us in the government work in silos, which is why there's a tough battle and there is a conflict of interest. But nobody is able to give a direction that's able to take everything together. And that body should be overarching. That body should have the teeth to be able to tell the ministries that this is the way to go forward. Thank you very much.
Excellent, sir. I think one of the major points that came out from your thing, which I picked up, is the way we are now interlinking the service, trade, and manufacturing. And you know why it is happening? It is because of the major, everywhere there's a connectivity through technology. There's a serious technology. That's why I talk of at what level of digitalization we are today. Are we at level 4 or level 5 or level 3? Because digital is going from just concept to manufacturing to operation to final state. So I think it's a very important point which you have brought in. Thank you very much for that. With this, now I'll invite for Professor Ram Singh. So please.
This report has done something very fundamental. It has brought an issue to forefront, issue that we thought we could, issue that we thought was behind us, which is that dominance of services in our economy. We had started to take a lot of comfort, and some of us had professional economists and policymakers had started to highlight dominance of services as something unique about Indian economy. The transition of economy from agriculture dominated economy directly to service dominated economy, it's something that had come to be taken as given, and for some it actually was not only a matter of comfort but also a matter of pride, a unique Indian way of growing. What this report does is that it questions our growth trajectory. It also questions our understanding of how we need to grow, how we should grow. It also asks a fundamental question whether there is a potential to grow. And it is tempting to draw parallels with China, China's experience in the numbers that we saw in the presentation, and those of us who had a chance to look at the report also. The Chinese share in manufacturing, world manufacturing, is way more than China's share in global GDP. We also say that for the US, opposite is true. That the American share in manufacturing is less than its share in global GDP. But in the second case, departure is not that pronounced. But what this report does is that it highlights centrality of manufacturing as a part of development process, as a part of inclusive growth process. It also highlights the challenges that we are not going to have luxury that China had, a stable globalization process that China benefited from. Instead, we are looking at what Dr. Nagesh Kumar called globalization. We are also, more than that, we are looking at a raised, extremely heightened level of uncertainty. And on top of it, we are looking at two more added dimensions. One is that we have to grow in an environmentally sustainable way. We have to adopt circular economy practices. And all these are added costs. They put added constraints on our growth process. Then we are looking at 4O technologies. That is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it can raise our productivity, but it also threatens employment elasticity of the growth path. So basically, the report, it is an occasion, it is a motivation for me to think not only as an economist, but also as a policymaker. The report also highlights some potential that we have as an economy. In a way, actually, if we look at, we are at the same level as China was in 1990s. So most of growth in China happened during last three and a half decades. So demographically speaking, at least on one front, we are situated very similar to what China was in 1990s. So our dependency ratio today is same as it was for China. It means that we have about 30 years window to capitalize on our demographic dividend. Today, we, in terms of able-bodied people who can take part in workforce, India accounts for about 22%. And for next 15-20 years also, the situation is going to be, so in terms of potential, we have potential to supply at least 1/5 of workforce on this planet. So that speaks about our potential. Also, other thing that is that speaks to our strength is what was discussed by my esteemed panelist, that today manufacturing has become service dominated. In particular, designing is an important part of high-end manufacturing. It accounts for upward of 20% of value addition in manufacturing. That is the designing processes, techniques. And again, about 1/5, at least 1/5 of designers are people of India, they are actually Indians who are working in India or working elsewhere for other nations, other MNCs, but they are Indians. We account for largest number of STEM qualified workforce. And the linkages that we see today are linkages between services and industry, and also within industry linkages are also more pronounced today. One of the things that struck me about this report was that it debunks the myth of K-shaped recovery. That's my reading of looking at some plots in the report. it shows that the growth rate for micro and small and medium enterprises is highly correlated with the overall manufacturing growth. The two go together simultaneously. Other notable feature was that actually responsiveness of micro and small enterprises to overall manufacturing growth is very high. In terms of when growth is picking up, manufacturing growth is picking up, growth of micro, small, medium enterprises, MSMEs, is faster. And when there's a slowdown, they also suffer from sharper contraction. It speaks to the interlinkages between what we call formal sector and informal sector. So the two, they are sailing in the same boat, not quite different boats. And therefore, the future in that sense, so it also means that we have to worry less about, what to focus on and what not to focus on. Whatever we can focus and promote is going to be, its impact is going to be more widely spread than is realized. In terms of the constraints that we are facing, uphill constraints, we have infrastructure related constraints, we have constraints, finance related constraints that were mentioned by Mr. Ravi. And they actually hurt in disproportionate manner as we go down bottom of the manufacturing pyramid. So cost of doing business are high. Cost of finance is high for Indian companies because we do not have a developed bond market. Cost of finance funding it increases disproportionately if we go from big companies to medium and then to small, then to micro. Our micro units have to borrow at a rate up to 36%. On paper you will see that that the cost of borrowing is 24%, but there are added costs. Even if you go by the face value cost of capital for micro enterprise is 24%. It's impossible. It's difficult to think of any business line that will give you this kind of returns. And that's the cost of borrowing for our micro and small enterprises. It shows where we need to work. It is a concern of first order importance. And it is a vicious cycle, what we call informal economy and high cost of borrowing. They are interlinked. They feed into each other. Because of informality, the micro and small enterprises do not have a trail of their transactions. And some of it, that the regulatory avoidance, they deliberately want to remain off. Not only they want to remain off, they actually do not create enough of digital footprints. And they lack collaterals. Therefore, since they lack collaterals, they cannot borrow from banks. They have to rely on NBFCs and non-institutional fundings. Moreover, and today it is possible to overcome problem of physical collaterals by creating digital collaterals, by creating digital footprints. But their regulatory oversight, perhaps we are over-regulated society, economy, that discourages them from creating truthful digital footprints. My feeling is that if government thinks of something similar to what they did, what Honorable Finance Minister did in this budget, which is up to 12 lakhs no tax obligation. Something of this type, this sort, that up to a significant level, all you can record your profits, your revenue, but you will have no tax obligation. That will go a long way in making micro and small enterprises, in creating digital footprints, in generating digital collaterals, and therefore reducing cost of finance for them. Other issue is of regulation. To give you an example, at times our regulations, it's a very paradoxical situation. Everything we can say about our country, opposite is also true. We have reduced a lot of regulatory burden during last 1 decade. Many cases, many provisions that invited criminal law, they have been done away with. But lot remains to be done. So my colleagues on the panel talked about, how important FDI is and why we are not getting. So we specialize in strange things. For example, most countries, most individuals will agree that if you and I sign a contract, one of us cannot be the judge. A judge has to be third party, someone we trust. But in our case, when we sign bilateral investment treaties, we insist that, in many cases, we insist that an Indian court will resolve the dispute. It's like, we are saying that, I'm a contracting party and I'm also a judge, should there be contractual dispute. So something like this does a lot of damage to our, we have potential, but it remains unrealized. And there is a lot more that can be done. Economic survey this year has done incredible job. It has come out openly admitting that there is a lot of regulatory burden hangover that needs to be dealt with. What we can do is we can help our economy, our society, our government by giving them nuts and bolts of where regulatory burden needs to be reduced and how we can go about doing so. Last 2 words, sir, I will take this 2 minutes about micro and small enterprises. So they are workhorse of Indian economy. But they also pose a paradox. They also highlight another paradox that we are faced with. On one hand, we want our productivity to go up. In the report, and there are other studies that show that the productivity goes up as production process becomes more and more capital intensive. We see that in this report also. Within MSME space, the productivity and capital intensity, they go hand in hand. By that logic, we need to encourage adoption of technologies, and also we should perhaps make our production process more capital intensive. But our challenge is not only growth, we want it to be inclusive, we want it to be employment generating also. And there we see that that's something that's very obvious. It requires no persuasion that as production process becomes capital intensive, its scope for gainful employment will come down. That's one. That's a challenge that MSME space has to deal with heads on. In the last budget. You might have noticed that the definitional threshold for MSMEs has been changed for micro, for small, and also for medium enterprises. It highlights another dimension of the paradox we are facing. By increasing these thresholds, it essentially means is that only about 4-5% of production companies involved in production, in services, will be outside of the definition of MSMEs. Everything else will become up to 95% of, in terms of unit count, becomes micro, medium, or small enterprises. Now, within that space, these units will be fighting for the concessions, support that comes by way of reservation in public procurement, concessional finance. So it means that through this intervention, budgetary intervention, we have created more competition within the MSME space. And some of these concerns have been addressed by the budget by introducing schemes specifically designed at micro enterprises. For example, credit card up to limit of 5 lakhs for 10 lakhs micro units. There's something, but point is that this is also one paradox we are facing. And my feeling is that in this paradox, we should err on the side of employment generating processes. So we have to grow fast, not only that we have to grow fast, but we have to keep our employment process inclusive in terms of employment opportunities. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. I think one point that Ram Singh very nicely brought out, that we are now entering, or rather living in a system where sustainability and circularity are becoming one of the major those parameters. And for that, I think we have very additional cost, irrespective of what we do. We have to take the burden on. Tomorrow, if we have to have green steel to be supplied, suppose, obviously it has 20 to 30% cost disadvantage. And if we have the international laws like CBAM coming up, where we will have to pay tax if we are not making green steel and selling grey steel or brown steel or whatever that. So that would certainly require capital investment, that would require again changes in the plant and so on and so forth. I think it's very important. Second part is the design capability. I think that country certainly has got a big question mark as far as that is concerned. And the design capability, what he was talking about, is spread Indian design capability in the large number of MNCs in our country, which does not directly benefit the Indian manufacturing sector as it is. So I think that's another point which certainly was very, very important. And a third point on which again I echo with him, and I think I have discussed with Mr. Nagesh Kumar, that the kind of inverse ratio we have with respect to the financing from the capital to the MS, from the corporate to the MSME is a very, very serious issue. Because the financing for MSME, if it is 36% and that of a corporate is 11 or 10%, I think there is a major dichotomy. Yeah, these are some of the points which I felt they are very good. Now, we have listened to the panelists, we have listened to Mr. Nagesh. Many of you would have certainly gone through the report which has come out so nicely. So I'll request if you have any questions, or if you want to make just 1 minute, let me just complete. If you want to make a comment, but if it can be a brief comment so that others can also get a chance, and then a question to any of the panelists or to Mr. Nagesh, I think will be welcome. So kindly introduce yourself and please ask the question. Yeah, sir, you have raised the finger first, so go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Yogi.
Mike,
You have a hand mic? Hand mic है? लेके आओ. काम करता है? सर को दीजिए. और थोड़ा इधर ही रहिए, थोड़ा इधर.
Thank you. My name is Yogendra Kumar. First of all, compliments to Dr. Nagesh Kumar. I think I'll benefit and educate myself by reading his book, his report. Just two very quick points. One is that now that artificial intelligence, particularly its trajectory, is unpredictable and unclear, and it is actually subject to high strategy competition. In terms of restrictions and sharing of information and data and all the rest of it, which actually goes into all aspects of any production process. So, to what extent are we preparing ourselves? Because that is not just the issue of mastering the high end, but also creating the soft infrastructure at all levels, so that even greater number of people can be skilled people can be made available to actually then, let's say, make it more sort of both horizontally spread as vertically more sophisticated. And that the fact being that is actually the subject we all read about that, whether it is Biden or China or whoever. That's one point. The second point is, as I see, in fact, other things I'll discuss with him later. One thing I always felt about infrastructure, I think there's something, I feel something conceptually deficient in our infrastructure. Because what's actually happening is that it's creating an economic and demographic imbalance. So what's actually happening is that instead of cities becoming decongested, they're actually getting increasingly congested. And the integration of the city, let's say the robustness of the economy of the city, technology, industry, and so on and so forth, it doesn't percolate in the surrounding areas. And that is entirely, I think, because of the way we conceived our infrastructure. Just one last point, sorry. Our regulatory regime, I think it can be light, there's no harm in that, but it has to be strictly enforceable. I mean, you see the electricity distribution center and all the rest of sector and all that, it's actually not working the way to the MSAs to work. So we have to think in terms of, as Professor Singh said, how do we ensure that when there's a dispute, number one, how the dispute is resolved quickly, number two, the enforcement regime, such as it is, quickly resolves issues. Thank you. Madam.
Datta, working as senior advisor in Exim Bank presently, retired as principal economic advisor. That the four basic factors which we were taught as part of economics in whether Indian school or Hindu college and all, still remain issues. Land, labor, capital, enterprise. Getting access to compact litigation-free tracts of land with all the facilities and connectivities. Now, some of the major states, South, Maharashtra, Gujarat, UP, other states are understanding its importance, trying to get investment, but they still remain an issue. I mean, I'm just highlighting the factors. There will be a lot of other questions on this. This still remains an issue in terms of access to land and availability in a quick and simple manner. For labor, the four codes are yet to be adopted by all the states. Many of them have done it, but not all. I mean, it's just simplification of the labor codes which needs to be accepted across the board, which is still a work in progress for last few years. For capital, as it was mentioned, especially for MSMEs and small industries and maybe even for startups, we know that there are 130,000 startups registered with DPIIT and all, but overall startup situation, MSMEs, access to capital, finance, and in terms of cost still remains a critical issue. For enterprise, while the taxation rates have reduced, the budgets have been, last couple of years, have been very proactive, but still, how much do we actually encourage and motivate enterprise still remains an issue. So I just wanted to give the four factors which we started our lives with still remains an issue in the context of our Indian economy.
Thank you.
Sir, thank you. I think first we need to discuss about demographic dividend, and until we have a technically installed our labor, because we are talking about AI, that means also labor to be oriented in a technical knowledge. And I don't think they are really prepared to take up this issue. Second thing is about labor law. FDI is not becoming labor law. So we have to modify as per our international standard. These two factors will make a third thing I can say about our neighborhood. We have to export it. Until we have a very good relationship, then we will not be able to export it. Thank you.
Is there one over there?
Namaskar, my name is Subodh Jindal. I am basically about 3 decades of experience in the corporate and now more independent. And thanks to Dr. Nagesh Kumar for a wonderful report and all the panelists for their views. This is more an observation and a challenge which I see this. I see the real challenge for our industrial is more internal between the large corporate and the MSME. I see some panelists say that large corporates are more protectionist and versus the MSME needs more openness. But the all major of policies are still continue to benefit the corporates, large corporate, whether it's for cost of finance, etc. And MSME is very close to me because I'm working with certain MSE, but I still believe while we lay down a lot of challenges with MSME fees, sometimes the existential crisis, but not enough is still being done. And that's probably the most democratic way of the industrial growth, what we want based from the employment perspective, sustainable point of view, providing the right policies, providing the cheaper cost of the parts, etc. But I think while there's so much of talk, but I still don't see a real, let's say a policy to a benefit. And I don't know, I also don't have an answer. And I'm trying to find those to help those people, MSME sector. Lot of talks. I mean, corporates got the advantage of tax reductions, etc. from 25%, the largest sector, but enough not being done. I don't know what the answer is, but how as a team, as a society, as a policy making we can do about this. Thank you.
Okay, इनको दे दीजिए फिर उनको देना उसके बाद.
My name is Monish Bhalla and I come from the industry side. I work in solar, mining and MSME sector. So, one of the points which have been repeatedly coming up is the renewable energy solar aspect. Since the gentleman asked for the answer, I'll just try to, put in a few words for your consideration if they could be, sent across to the right channels. The biggest problem is that our solar industry is about 10-year-old. And now we are at about 44,000 megawatt capacity, and we are aiming in 2026 about 110 megawatts. 90% of the panels today are Chinese panels. From PPA of 16 rupees, we came down to 4 rupees. Today we are sub 2 rupees. So today, wherever the EPC contracts they are being awarded, we are only focusing on 1.99, 1.95 paisa. My suggestion is, in case if slight increase in that could be done to say 2.25 or 2.5, this will encourage the Indian industry to get Indian panels. Because of the tightness in the budgets, they are forced to go to the Chinese, and for any issues, though they claim that the panel has a life of 25 years, we have not even crossed 10 years as yet. So when the replacement thing will come, it will be a very big dent to our efforts to increase the capacity. So PPA rates, instead of bringing them down, slight consideration on this should be there. Now, this was addressed to Shri Saraswat ji for your consideration as a media member. My next thing would be to Shri Dammu Ravi ji. Since I am into iron ore mining also, and we work very extensively in Africa and Middle Eastern countries, lot of mining is happening there. Nobody wants to work with China. They all are looking at India as a best alternative. There are certain cases where we went to Rare Earth Limited, then we were, Russia Atomic Energy, or, the Niti Aayog to, get solutions. We've only got lab level capabilities because those minerals like coltan, tantalum are not available in the country, and certain other rare earth minerals. If the government would take the initiative of expanding the, coming out of the lab level capability to actual refining capabilities, there's enough investment, and from US and other sectors who will support India in developing those. And lastly, since there's been a discussion on MSME, revival of COVID has dented most of the people. Post-COVID, most of these MSME companies have gone into the red. To get them out, a very beautiful concept of CIRP was started, the Corporate Insolvency Resolution Process. Very unfortunately, it is not being addressed the right way. The focus of the creditors or the ARCs is not to resolve the companies or revive them. They are treating it as a recovery process only. So if that approach doesn't change, and trust me, I would like to not say it in as many words, but this is really hurting. And I can stress, give more inputs on this at a personal level. Please, thank you so much.
I'm a journalist with the Reuters News Agency. So this question is to the esteemed panel, not for reporting, but just for understanding the things, because the panel represents the RBI, Niti Aayog, and Ministry of External Affairs and Economic Advisors at this stage. As the report points out and the subsequent panelists pointed out, that two major issues which we understand in view of what is happening globally at whether it is Trump's reciprocal tariff threats or in every FTA talks, like whether with the EU, with the England. So the issue of this tariff is coming up. And the report we also pointed out that our SMEs are facing the problem of these high tariffs. So, and second issue, like you pointed out, is that this real, this effective value of this, our currencies remains high, rupee remains appreciated. So is there a broader understanding within the government to address these two critical issues at any level? Thank you.
Report and discussion. I would like to take up this issue of, as Dr. Nagesh Kumar said, industry and services would go in hand. The distinction is broad. Think about Apple. Why we like Apple? Who like?
It is sweet.
Is it because of the hardware in it, or is the software in it? It is both. From washing machine to car, It is not just hardware, it also about software. But if you look at what we have done, despite all this hullabaloo in our IT industry, we have not done well. Our IT industry is more of application of software rather than developing software. So that R&D culture somehow we have not been able to develop. And now these both industry and services probably have to come together and see how we can develop them together. Whether you would agree with that.
Fully agreed.
My name is Anand. I work as principal advisor in the government, in DEA and later in MeitY also. My question is very simple. I think some mention needs to be made on the predictability of policies, which means that you ask anybody in the industry, they'll say, yeah, reform, do this, improve taxation, do this, but please make it predictable.
Absolutely.
Directional predictability is absolutely critical. You cannot have tariffs up one day, down another day, because every reform changes relative prices. And every relative price change changes the entire economics. And this is an experience from the 90s when most of the industries invested very heavily, we reduced their tariffs. Good, but we wiped out the industry. So that's a very important thing. Second thing is, why is the industry not investing? When if you look at the pattern, almost every large group has diversified into real estate, but not into manufacturing. And this is a pattern which actually needs to be carefully investigated. And I think Mr. Ajay Shankar did mention this in passing, but I think this requires a very careful investigation on why and what is the reason why industry is not investing despite getting fairly serious tax breaks. It's not something insubstantial. Thank you.
That's it. Nagesh Kumar for excellent report, Harnessing India's Manufacturing Potential. The basic issues which the report throws up and also brings the status are very well discussed now. We all know that all the speakers have said that India has leapfrogged from an agriculture economy to the service-oriented economy. And we have had a transition in 91, which was basically in terms of the kind of economic controls we had. The 91 has certainly made some difference. What is the difference that Mr. Ajay Shankar brought out? One of them was free market economy. And then slowly we started saying that there is no place for government as far as this industry manufacturing is concerned. These are the two major, and this agenda continues even today, because when I am in NITI Aayog, repeatedly we only talk of free market economy, despite the fact that we all realize today that protectionism is the order of the day. All of us talk about China, and we say that China has done great progress, but nobody discusses the kind of policies China has followed, both in terms of IP, both in terms of protectionism, both in terms of subsidies, both in terms of copying the technologies from across the country, and we in India taking the attitude of being a Brahminic nation. We are a Brahmin, we are a Brahmin community. Despite the fact we know that all this is happening, we still continue to say that no, we should not distinguish, we should not put tariffs, because we are not, and we should get into more RCEPs, we should get into more FTAs, we should go in all these schemes, which are actually against the basic norm of free market economy, which is not there. There's nothing like free market economy. In a situation like that, if you continue to have your policies turned around that, then the basic principles which Madam just now mentioned, turn around that, and also do nothing about the basic issues which have been there right from 90s, why even 90s earlier, land, labor, finance, and enterprise. In fact, I call it cost of logistics, cost of land, cost of labor, cost of financing, cost of power, cost of law, and all these costs which are adverse as far as the manufacturing is concerned in the country. We have done nothing about it. All the budget schemes which we are talking today have not been resulting into any of these problems. Our cost of logistics still continues to be highest in the world, 14 to 17%. Our cost of financing happens to be, just now numbers were identified by Professor Ram Singh. Now, when you look at all this, are we in the right direction? I want to just draw your attention to one particular point. I'm a product, probably many of us are very senior here. I'm also one of the senior among them. I don't know whether I'm senior most, but I'm still quite old. So I have seen the Indian economy from 1950s and 60s and 70s. I have seen as a scientist, India being producing transistors, capacitors, resistances, and many of the even ICs which were being manufactured in my country, and I used to use them in my missile program, in my basic machine building. But today when I don't see any of these items available from the Indian manufacturers. What transcribed? This free market economy leading to the closure of our public sector undertakings which are doing this job, and also making them non-competitive by opening the doors of dumping being done, and all these manufacturing companies which were actually once upon a time small enterprises doing this job, they became traders. Because they found very easy, as he was talking about tools, they found very easy to provide solutions by trading rather than manufacturing. Now that is the bane of this free market economy which we have brought in today. We killed our manufacturing ecosystem which was there, and hence we thought that 91, 92, the free market will be able to speed up the manufacturing. It didn't happen. What happened was that the service orientation becomes very high. And the service orientation also became high because we have a cheap labor cost. I fully agree with the gentleman, he talked about our IT industry. Our IT industry is not an industry which has done any measurable contribution as far as the technology of IT is concerned. Our measurable contribution is only in terms of providing services to gas companies in UK or the finance companies in US or distribution and logistics companies in here and there. And even what we are doing today, we are doing exactly the same thing. We are talking, that is where we are talking of, while we should achieve the demographic dividend in the manufacturing which we have today, we are not able to achieve that. We are not able to gain that. Mainly because the skills which are needed with this generation today, with the demography, are missing. I'll give an example. We have DeepSeek coming today from China, and everybody is perturbed today. The DeepSeek has come, only $5 million investment, DeepSeek has come. India is also talking about artificial intelligence, right from NASCOM to everybody talks of artificial intelligence. If the Python was not there, not even a single artificial intelligence application will be written by an Indian today, because we have no foundational software packages done by us. And that is where I agree with Dr. Singh on that particular thing. India has never been a designer country. Our major focus has been in assembly and doing that. So today also, as I think Mr. Ajay Shankar was talking of, we are an assembly nation. Maruti in 1984 started with assembly, but at least they got into localization, and that actually one industry which has spurred the Indian development of the automobile industry. Today we have local manufacturing of components, supply chain, materials. Maybe the import may be about 20% or 25%. Even engines which were once upon a time being done from outside are being done today in our own country. They are designed by country. But you see a story now. The moment technology transition is taking place, the IC engine technology is going into the EV technology. Every EV which is manufactured today, whether it is by Tatas or Mahindras or by Bajaj or anybody, 80% is the import content. The story is not changing. The localization is not happening. That now coming to the schemes. We are trying to give all the schemes incentives to our industry to get manufacturing on the anvil. The PLI schemes in the face of solar panels, the solar cells. The PLI schemes in semiconductor, the PLI schemes in the case of battery, the PLI scheme in the case of fuel cells, PLI scheme in the sales of all the electronics and all that, spec and all that, all of them. 5-year, 6-year-old, and I think gentleman is still talking about that all solar panels are being imported from China. By the time I think he gets 100 gigawatts of that solar power in the country, 90% of the domestic demand would have also tapered off. And then our countries will say, I'm producing solar cells in my country, but nobody is buying. So the speed is also essence of the matter. A scheme which came up in 2017, today we are talking of 2025, the corporates have not set up the solar manufacturing lines. The people have not set up the battery manufacturing lines. Coming to MSMEs, I already said that. MSMEs today, with all the policies, are at the receiving end of the stick. Although they are contributing maximum, I think about 45%, if I am not wrong, 45% they are contributing. But if you look at their financial condition today, it is terrible. That day Dr. Nagesh came to me, I gave a story. There is an MSME which has got an order for 700 crores from Department of Atomic Energy. But he doesn't have assets to give bank guarantee. And the bank is not ready to give him cover. They came pleading with us. It's a strategic sector, atomic energy. They are the only agency which has got the technology for that. And my bank is so blind that he said, no, I will not give you, whatever it happens. I had to write a letter to Finance Ministry talked to somebody. After 3 months, I think we succeeded in getting him the bank guarantee. Now, can there be a process by which we can handle things like that? Cannot be there. So this is called what is called a blind approach. Regulations are there. And I fully agree with Professor Ramsingh when he says that we have today the 36% for the MSME and 11% for the corporate. Why? Because MSME is not able to give you a collateral. Is that only way? There is a gentleman today, one of the consultants in architecture for your DRDO. This man is suffering today because DRDO has not paid 14 crores payment to him. He is MSME. And he has got an order from the Navy. He is not able to execute the order because bank is not now honoring his bank guarantee. This is there in manufacturing sector also. He is an architect, civil engineer, making infrastructure. So when you have such kind of policies, I think manufacturing will not thrive. Now, I would like to cover up some of the points. One point which you mentioned, sir, about the PPA. I think this solar energy or the renewable energy in general have gone into this reverse auction and things like that have really been not very effective, not very useful. It has actually made inefficient systems to come in the market all the time. We should not be promoting this kind of a policy. I think we should look at it in a big way. There is something called, tomorrow somebody will say, I provide solar energy at 80 paisa per unit. Will you accept it? It is like when we buy some item from China and we find that the cost of the product is not even equal to the raw material cost in that, even the lowest level, and we still accept it. Now, how will you then? Obviously, we are living into a future dream. What is the future dream? 25 years PPA. The rate at which the Chinese cells efficiency comes down is 1.5% per year. The first solar efficiency comes down at 0.3 to 0.4% or 0.25% per year. So 1.4% per year is not going to give you what, but who is going to be there at 25 years? You are living in that kind of a world. So, friend, we have to look at all this very carefully. Nurturing MSME, there is a need for, there is a, I am one of the persons who is not generally very happy of signing the FTA and RCEP unless there is a major understanding on what products we should try. Tomorrow, if we are going to sign a free trade agreement on some products, we are going to make some list and make, like we did in the case of RCEP. When we did the list of 120 items in RCEP, what was the result of that? Number one, there was a loss of $84 billion I had calculated in Niti Aayog. because of that hardship itself. And the industry, all my component industry went into a trading business. This was with signing IIC with the Southeast Asian countries. That is what happened. So, if you are going to sign FTAs now, whether it is the East European or anybody else, I think one has to be very careful. Second thing is value addition. People are talking about Apple. Apple is making use of our lower cost of labor. Other than that, as the localization is concerned, even today the Apple, although we have given a moratorium of 3 years, 3 years have passed, the localization has not gone more than 10%. What is great about it? Yes, my labor cost is the lowest. In fact, your report indicates very clearly that pie chart is at lowest. People will come. But what exactly is happening? It is again, we are paying like it is happening in the case of service sector. Sir, unless you create wealth, you cannot make economy strong. A service sector is transfer of money from one end to another end. You have to create wealth only through production, through manufacturing and so on. So creation of wealth is most important. Second part is, industry is not ready to invest. Yes, I agree with you. The Indian innovation system has not been able to contribute, agree with you. Reason is, we have treated industry as a government policy, I am telling you. The private sector particularly as some kind of a pariah. When I was in DIDA, we were not able to give even one project to any private company. Contract we can give for manufacturing, but I can't give a grant. I can't give anything. Even today, I think the grant to the private sectors are not permitted. I may be corrected if I am wrong. So, because I heard somewhere that grants are now being given. But that is the situation. Whereas if you are always comparing of DARPA, you are saying DARPA should be there. DARPA spends money in private sector on the most unknown sectors of technology. The Department of Energy, through its 39 laboratories in US, spends money on the all private sectors for producing technologies for the next generation of technologies. Here, we have got 1,80,000 crores something announced very recently that we will spend in private sector. I am going through that scheme with the finance ministry. We are not talking of a very clean system of giving money to the, we are talking of blended finance, we are talking of various modes of finance, and all that is not going to promote. And last 1 year we are actually discussing how we will, so DPIT is still continuing to work on that. Now, if you want to give 1 lakh or whatever 80,000 crores and support the private sector for investment, then only the innovation will come. Our private sector is risk averse. Indians by nature are risk averse. We are born risk averse. We don't want to take risk. So if we don't want to take risk, then we have to support them. If we have to support them, we have to trust them. We have to give them the money, monitor them, work with them, treat them as your partner. Then only it will happen. Otherwise, what is happening? Even the startups which are coming today, they are being funded by foreign investors. How many Indian investors are investing into the Indian startups? Numbers, the Narayana Murthy, the Nanda Nilekani and all that, nobody is investing. They are only they are getting from Singapore, they are getting from US, and finally what happens? Many of them are getting merged. They are being acquired. So friends, this is the situation. If we have to really do this 1,80,000 crores what the government of India has done, I think we should invest on private sector. We should bring R&D there. We should do innovation there. That will change the character of India's manufacturing sector. You said, how do we catch up with China? The only way you can catch up with China is doing two things. R&D in the private sector, number two, corporate should go into scale of operation. You cannot continue to remain at subscale. Subscale diffused thinking will not work. You have to go on a large scale. Now, if company A is going to set up a solar power plant, company B is also going to make a photovoltaic cell, or company C is also being provided, that's not the answer, because we don't have that kind of resource. I think we should have at least one or two companies who can manufacture for the country and also for export. Because our demand has already been met. But tomorrow electrolyzers, we are talking of 5 million tons of hydrogen to be produced under the National Hydrogen Mission. That means the electrolyzer industry, if you look at in manufacturing, if you can get, again today we are importing all the electrolyzers from China, but even now it is not late. If we can set up a 5 terawatt hour electrolyzer industry in the country, for which the PLI has been provided, I think we will be able to, if not China, at least we can take care of Southeast Asia, we can take care of Middle East, we can take care of other countries. But we should do it on time. We are not doing it. If you are going to do it in 2030 or 35, I think we are going to be late. So that is what I would like to say. To catch up with China, I think it's important that R&D, deep tech innovation, investment in R&D and scale, these should be our areas. One point I would like to mention, we should not shy away from putting duties on import. Wherever India has got its own innovation and its own product, we should be not hesitant. People talk about World Trade Organization, tariff, this, that and all that. I think we should find ways and means of doing it the way the Chinese have found. If they have found, we should also find. They are sourcing it. You put a trade barrier on China, they source it through Vietnam or they source it through Malaysia. Country of origin point is also not even talked of. And we don't check it. It's a Chinese product or it is a Vietnamese product that is coming to us. It will bypass all your tariffs. So I think we have to have a much stronger regulation on that. And that will be the most important part. Last point I would say, the design capability. I fully agree with you that cannot be certainly ignored, because design and innovation, they go hand in gloves. If a nation does not innovate in today's world, it cannot compete. You have to be an innovation nation, and manufacturing sector needs new innovation because technology is changing. Industry 4.0 is coming, automation is coming, robotics is coming. We have to find ways and means of keeping pace with everybody, otherwise our product will not be competitive. Our companies cannot remain static with what they did in 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s. Last point I would like to mention, and I think I agree with Ajay Shankar ji, government should withdraw from all the activities. Actually, there's a point which many of our people in the government have been talking, that the public sector undertaking should be closed down and things like that. I have been sitting on 3 chairs. I have reviewed BHEL, I have reviewed HEC, I have reviewed HMP. If you see all these companies, and if you see the way we run our public sectors, they are not companies, they are nothing but a replica of another government department. They are not a business entity. The CMD of a public sector enterprise reports to the Joint Secretary in the ministry. The board chairman has a power of only 2 crores of a B class. How can you take any? 75 years have passed in HEC, not even a single machine has been changed. And now we are saying HEC is in red. Whereas they have 1,200 crores orders at their order book today. They have no OPEX. Who is responsible? If you don't say that government can run, but the government, the way we have run the PSUs, it is not the PSUs are wrong. The way we have run the PSUs, we have done not the right thing. We have to change that, and PSUs can deliver. And particularly in some critical sectors, PSUs can deliver. So you talked about rare earths. We are working on rare earths in a big way. Today, there are technologies, Indian technologies available, which can take rare earths from the mineral, make it up to the magnet. There is a dichotomy. We are going to the government to fund it because the cost of making metal and cost of making oxide is, China is a major factor. We are selling it at such throwaway prices. So we are asking government to put duty there. So it's a catch-22 situation that happened. With these few words, I would like to close my discourse on this. I can talk and talk and talk various issues, but I can only say that there is no other escaping, but India has to become a manufacturing nation. India has to produce wealth if it has to go to the 30 trillion or 10 trillion, what Mr. Dammu has mentioned. And we can do it. We have capability. But I think policy, predictability, policy sustainability important. Hitting on the basic measures which Madam mentioned, we have to still resolve all of them. We have to bring innovation under control. We have to help the policies to MSMEs in a big way. We have to bring proper policies as far as the tariffs and duties are concerned. Thank you very much.
Very splendid.
Did I create a problem?
No, no. I think a wonderful sum up of this very rich discussion, and I think it was music to my ears, and I'm sure everyone's ears, that the final note that you left us on, that we can do it, and it's just a matter of getting our act together and the willpower and political will, all working together, and we can get there. So this is a very important message, and this is exactly what we tried to say in the report, that without manufacturing we won't get where we want to go to, and for manufacturing all of these things are present in the country, just a matter of organizing ourselves better. And so on that note, I think I want to really thank you, sir. Wonderful way and what a elegant manner you have conducted this discourse this evening. I wish we had more time, but IIC programs begin at 6:30, which was a big constraint. But I think we need to remain engaged with you, sir. So your very, sort of insightful understanding of the issues that we are confronting with. And similarly, in the same breath, the three eminent panelists, I mean, wonderful, all of them. And so let's give them a very big hand. And to all of you sitting here at 8:30, and this is, I was very impressed with the commitment of all of you to the manufacturing sector and the manufacturing, sort of journey or trajectory of India. So I think there is hope, and we can get there. So on that note, I'm very, very grateful to every one of you and for joining us, and we will continue this dialogue to build our manufacturing capability and exploit our full potential. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. We have such serious problems. I have not brought my car. Also.